Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Night Wars. It is March 11th, 1996, and we are live with WCW Nitro at and this is a mouthful, Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I am Scott. With me is Joseph. Joseph, how are you this fine day?
I am great on this particular day. I am great. We'll find out if I'm the same tomorrow.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. That was like poetry. That should be a quote.
That should be a
That should be
quote.
one of those. Yeah, that should be one of those self-help kind of quotes with the cat hanging on the tree. It moved me.
Or what it can be is one of those quotes that white women post on their Facebook, where it's like a picture of Cillian Murphy and the Peaky Blinders, and then they have like a quote that never took place in that show, but it shows how like amazing they are as a person and like how they just aren't dealing with anybody's bullshit anymore. But that chick is like totally gonna fucking start dating a loser again. Like that's right around the corner.
First of all, you're losing us the white women demographic that's listening to this podcast because we know you're out there. And secondly, they could have said that on Peaky Blinders, and even if they didn't, they said it by order of the Peaky Blinders. So there you go. But
that's our first timely reference, by the way. That's our first reference that's ever been like within the last couple of years on this show.
What are you talking about?
Well, all of our references are usually like 70s and prior.
Peaky Blinders is a show?
Anyways,
we got Eric Bischoff. We got Steve Mongo McMichael. We got Bobby the Brain Heenan. And we got a new world television champion, Lex Luger. It happened over the weekend because we don't need to do title changes on our flagship program. Television title? United States title? Who cares? Let's get into it. We got the Giant. We got Hacksaw Jim Duggan, my boy. I'm so excited to see him. What are they doing to my boy? He getting squashed.
my very first note is Scott's not going to be happy. I wrote that the minute Hacksaw's opponent came out. I was like, oh.
I mean, yeah, you know what's going to happen. You see the Giant go, that's what it is. Hacksaw gives him a good run. Hacksaw is great in any match. He does the Hacksaw. It doesn't matter if he's supposed to squash it. He's Hacksaw in every single match. He gets squashed. He actually goes quite a while, though. It's 6 minutes, 30 seconds. Brian Pillman makes an appearance. He's at ringside causing trouble. He's trying to get fired. He's the loose cannon. This is after he quit the match at the pay-per-view. He said, I respect you, Mr. Booker Man. Broke kayfabe. He left. It was a big thing. No one knew it was happening except for him and Eric Bischoff. This is kind of part of some grand storyline they've got where Brian Pillman's going to do all these things. He's going to get fired. He's even going to go wrestle at some other promotions to really kind of drive home the point that this is real. And then he's going to make his triumphant return back to WCW, except that never actually happens. He ends up signing with WWF, and that's where he goes. But right now, that's what we think's going to happen. That's at least what Eric Bischoff thinks is going to happen. I don't know if this was always Brian Pillman's plan, was to get out of his contract and swerve him, or if he was in on it until he got a deal he couldn't refuse. But that's what's happening. What'd you think about this match, though, Joseph? I mean, Duggan gets choke slammed, but not before beating Jimmy Hart's ass, and that's got to count for something.
I gave this a B, honestly. I thought this was very well done all around from a spectacle standpoint, from a match standpoint. Obviously, there's no real storyline going on here, so can't give any grades or marks for that. But I thought it was really well done. You might have to correct me on this, but I felt like Brian Pillman had already been fired. I thought he was invading here.
You might be right. I don't know if we ever officially fired. Did we ever say he was officially fired?
I feel like they said it on like the last page. Because remember, they were like, it's down to 3 horsemen now, not 4 horsemen.
Well, because he quit. It wasn't quit. It was an I respect you match. It wasn't an I quit match. It was an I respect you match. And he just said, I respect you, Mr. Booker, man.
But after that, they started referring to them as the 3 horsemen. And they were saying that he was no longer in the company.
Well, then there you go. I guess he's back causing a stink. My goodness.
So that's kind of what I really enjoyed about this, right? Because initially, before he's even there, he had like hired 2 people or convince two people to hold up signs that say, call Brian at 1-900-288-PILL. And I went, oh, and I looked that up immediately. And I was like, okay, so that's clearly him. He was orchestrating that. I didn't expect him to show up. He shows up like after that happens because the security takes those signs away. And after that happens, he shows up like towards the end of the match, like you were mentioning. And so I thought it was him infiltrating because then the security takes him away. And it's crazy. I thought that was all enjoyable. That really, whether it's a WCW storyline or not, it's not going to play out in WCW for them. So it's not that important to talk about. It's more important for him as a wrestler. I thought that was cool. The match, though, I thought, I mean, you said it already, right? Hacksaw is just so good at what he does. And he made the Giant look good in this match. I disagree that it was a squash match. There was a couple moments where I was like, dude, is Hacksaw going to pull this off? I really felt that way. I know that he was going to be booked to lose, and I know that that's the right call based off of where you're pushing the Giant. But I thoroughly enjoyed what Hacksaw brought to this. He got a surprising amount of offense in this. And even though Giant winning really seemed obvious, Hacksaw made me believe that he was going to pull it off. I think this is a great way to start your show.
And Giant really sold for him.
Mm-hmm.
Giant was selling for Hacksaw. Yeah, I guess you're right. I say it's a squash match because you see his opponent and you know what's going to happen. But you're right. I mean, they do go for 6 minutes, 30 seconds. It's a fairly long match. Hacksaw goes on offense quite a bit. You know, Giant really sells for him. Giant doesn't just act like none of this is phasing him. He sells for Hacksaw, but, you know, Giant has to win because we're pushing Giant. So I guess that's why I call it a squash match, even if it wasn't necessarily the definition of a squash match. But you know what was a squash match?
What's that, Scott?
The Perlator 500 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway in Hampton, Georgia this weekend because the WCW NASCAR came in fourth. And they lost to some dude named Dale Earnhardt. That's a squash match right there. When you're going up against Dale Earnhardt, you better watch yourself. But I just thought you should know.
There's a really bad joke there that I'm just not even going to make.
Don't you dare.
I'm going to move on.
Don't you dare. But ladies and gentlemen, please wear your seatbelts. That's all I got to say about that. Dale Earnhardt was notorious for not wearing his safety harness. So yeah, do that. You know, buckle up for safety. After that, though, because I'm just going to keep moving because I feel like the longer I go here, the longer I am inviting you to make this horrible reference that will get us banned from all podcasting outlets. Because as you know, most podcasters are big NASCAR fans. Next up, it's the Road Warriors versus the Nasty Boys. This is billed as the Road Warriors versus the Nasty Boys. But Joseph,
what's up?
Something happens.
Oh.
Something has happened to the Nasty Boys backstage.
Whoa.
And my God, the Steiner brothers are back and they ride out on Harley Davidson motorcycles to make their surprise return to WCW. First time they've been on a WCW program since 1992. And you know I love me some Steiner brothers, Joseph. Of note, Rick Steiner starts barking, chef's kiss. Hawk doesn't know what to do about that, so he just tags Animal in, and I loved that segment. Otherwise, fantastic back and forth. This is a dream match. The Road Warriors versus the Steiner Brothers. Oh, Joseph, I'm oozing with delight here. Teenage ecstasy, as Goldust said last week. Somehow, though, the Road Warriors win it, which is kind of weird since this is the Steiners' grand return. But long-term storytelling or something, I guess. What do you think, Joseph?
So this, you mentioned right off the bat that this is the Steiners' return. Obviously, yeah, they were wrestling in various promotions, including New Japan Pro Wrestling, ECW, WWF. They kind of went all around for quite a few years, and then now they're back here. The crowd is hyped for them, and they should be. You know, nowadays, when you have like a giant return like this and the crowd gets hyped, it's almost like they remember all the history going in. I don't know if it was the same way back then because now we have kind of the internet that really helps with that stuff, but they sure as hell act like they remember all the history of the Steiners and WCW, and that's great. I thought it was a great job. I will say one thing though, Scott. A few weeks ago on this very program, you were quite negative of the Road Warriors, even saying that they lost a step, that they really weren't them anymore, that they really couldn't hang in today's 1996, today's wrestling. And I gotta say, they are shitting all over on you. They are Vince McMahoning you in a three-way right now.
For the love of God. No, I was gonna make a joke, and then you end on that, and I don't know where to go from here. Like, I think we just like I'm kinda just thinking of just walking away, just putting the headset down and walking away after that. But I will say you're right. I knew where you were gonna go with that. Well, I didn't completely know where you were gonna go with that, but I knew you were gonna give me some guff about my comments, my recent comments regarding the Road Warriors and how I seems kind of hypocritical of me to be so hot on them on this night. Well, let me just tell you, Joseph, Papa's got a brand new bag, and the Road Warriors are dealing. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah, no, it's great. It really, I mean, this is kind of one of those matches that we've talked about a million times on this podcast, and we're going to keep talking about it. It's just normally it's two meaty men. Here we got four meaty men slapping meat. They do a great job together. You mentioned it was a dream match. That's I believe those were your exact words, and you're not wrong. You could put this match on not every week, but at least once a year, and you would never get bored of it. It's so cool. So you mentioned at the top of the program, Lex Luger is now kind of the TV champion. There's going to be some weird shenanigans going on with Lex that we'll be talking about as this week and kind of going into next week as that kind of continues. And so it looks like they're trying to make a pivot here with the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors were clearly supposed to be having this feud with Lex Luger and Sting, and that doesn't seem to be going forward anymore based off of those shenanigans that we'll talk about. So they kind of need to start a rivalry. And this is very clearly the start of a rivalry because the Road Warriors, yeah, they win. And you said that was weird that they would win when the Steiners just re-debuted, but they don't win clean. They have to cheat to win. So I liked that. It got a B plus for me.
I hear you, man. I hear you. But the Steiners are back, and we are all better for it. But let's just get into it. Let's get into the next match because you talked about Lex Luger. That's a great segue because we got the Lex Luger match up next. We got Lex Luger versus the German Wunderkind, Alex Wright, which is great because we have listeners in Germany, Joseph. So they're happy. They got their hometown favorite, Alex Wright, up here versus Lex Luger for the WCW World Television Championship. And you know what happens, Joseph?
What's that, Scott?
Alex Wright loses.
Oh, dude, Ronnie's going to be so upset now.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. Our boy Ronnie needed a win here, and they didn't give it to him. And I'm mad. And I am mad. 6 minutes, 37 seconds. Jimmy Hart cheats. Lex wins. Joseph, tell me about these shenanigans.
Scott, you might be surprised to discover that I thoroughly enjoyed this segment, like top to bottom. I thought it was very well done. There's some stuff that we got to talk about. Johnny B. Bad is no longer with the company. And so Eric Bischoff makes up this whole storyline as to why he's no longer with the company. It's ridiculous. It's a lot of the stuff that we've kind of talked about with Eric Bischoff having been petty around this time, especially when wrestlers kind of left. He couldn't hang with the big boys. Turns out he took a diamond cutter and then a loss later on to Lex Luger. And so he tucked his tail between his legs and he's left. Stuff like that. It doesn't serve the purpose for anybody. So that part I don't like, and it's whatever, but they just move on finally. After that, we get to see something that we've both, and I specifically have complained about for a long time now, which is we get to see the TV title on Nitro. I genuinely think making Lex Luger the next TV champion is a great move from WCW. I've kind of given them a lot of guff in how they've handled some of their titles very recently. I think this is a huge move because kind of like what Sting did for the US Championship when we started watching this program and making this podcast, Lex Luger is a bona fide star. He's not just a good lower card or good mid card guy. This is a main eventer. This is a guy you're kind of helping to build your program around. And they give him the TV championship. And now you're seeing Alex Wright get a spot in the sun that he hasn't had for many weeks. And I can't wait to see more of him, which we will as the cruiserweight division really takes form. I like this move from a booking standpoint. I think it does a really good job. Also, what's really interesting to me is this is the first time I think in the history of this podcast that I've enjoyed Jimmy Hart. He helps Lex cheat, and then Lex pretends after he finds out, allegedly, that he didn't know, he's appalled that Jimmy Hart helped him and that he had to win by cheating. And that made me laugh. I thought it was really well done. And this is going to be something they actually do for a few weeks. Dorky, quirky Lex and Jimmy Hart kind of being solely with Lex. I'm starting to come around to Jimmy Hart. I don't know what's going on, Scott. It's weird. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's clearly got to be something with the moon and the planets aligning or something. But you're right. We love goofball Lex. We love goofy Lex. And this, oh, I didn't know, is good stuff. I enjoyed it. You know, I agree with you that I think Lex makes a good TV champion, and I agree that it's crazy that he is defending the WCW World Television Championship on WCW's flagship television program. That's crazy. It's breaking new ground. I can't believe it. You never know what's going to happen in the WCW. They are defending television titles on flagship television programs. My God. What a night. But the night's not over, Joseph. It's only going to go up from here. And you know why I say that, Joseph?
Why is that, Scott?
Because we got our main event. And our main event is a 6-man tag team lumberjack strap match. That's a hell of a match title there. And who do we got in this match, Joseph? We got Kevin Sullivan. We got Arn Anderson. We got Ric Flair. We got Hulk Hogan. We've got Randy Savage and Joseph. And you're wondering, who could round out this Mount Rushmore of wrestling talent? Well, it is none other than the Booty Man.
That voice is not quite healed yet, fellas.
It's not quite there yet, but I did it for you people.
Loved it.
The Booty Man is back.
I'm going to get, just so you guys know, I'm going to get a text in a few days that just says, so I lost my voice again.
I did it because it needed to be done. And I do it for the people. So what is a lumberjack strap match, Joseph? Explain this match to our faithful listeners.
Okay, so technically it's a 6-man tornado tag lumberjack strap match. They don't say tornado tag, but that's kind of the concept, okay? You kind of have 4 types of matches here. I'm going to break down what all those matches are supposed to do. So in a 6-man tag, the point of it is to give 6 men a moment to showcase each of their talents. No one has to do a full length match. Each one of them gets to kind of do their greatest hits. And then you usually have a fun kind of ending. Usually it's the heels get usurped by the good guys, something crazy that's fun and makes the fans really happy. That's the 6-man tag. Now, a tornado tag is predominantly 2 versus 2. It's a tag match, and everyone's in the ring. There's no tagging in. You don't have to sit on the ropes and wait for your opponent to tag you in. Everybody's wrestling at one time. The point of this is you get to see a lot more double team moves because you're not restricted to a 5 count in the ring if you're not the legitimate man. You don't have to worry about tagging people, so you don't get disqualified, which means you get way more opportunities for 2-on-1 situations. One of the good guys gets knocked out, gets thrown outside the ring. The 2 heels get to go 2-on-1 against the other good guy, and they get to have a lot of fun with that. And then it turns around the other way. Now the heels are the team that has 1, and the faces have 2, and it's a lot of fun. That's the point of that match. Then you've got a lumberjack match, and lumberjack match is usually a 1-on-1 situation. You've got a face and a heel, and you have all these lumberjacks who are on the outside of the ring. Usually 2 sides are both bad guys and 2 sides are good guys. And the point of this is to not allow the heel to run away. Every time he does, the good guys politely, gently escort him back into the ring. Every time the good guy gets knocked out, the heels take the time to beat the ever loving hell out of him and then throw him back in the ring. It's a lot of fun, usually ends with a very interesting ending. The Lumberjacks get a moment to shine, but none of them get to do any special moves, usually a lot of punches and kicks and things like that, but it keeps everything in the ring. Then you've got the strap match. And the strap match is kind of like the lumberjack match in the sense that you don't really have the ability to leave. You're strapped to your opponent, and it keeps the two men together at all times. And it usually gets pretty bloody and brutal because it's also a no disqualification match. So you have this very fun, interesting hardcore style match before they really knew what a hardcore match was, because ECW wasn't the land of hardcore yet. So those are all four matches. What we get here is all four of them combined. And do you know what that makes, Scott?
Well, I believe it makes a 6-man tag team lumberjack strap match.
You're wrong. What it
Okay.
makes is a steaming pile of shit.
Oh, well, I mean, we do get Faces of Fear and lumberjack shirts.
I don't care.
I mean, I liked it. I liked it.
This match is horrible. It got an F from me. I think you put all these things together, so at no point do you know what's happening. Each one of these matches has a very specific design. And because you put all them together, none of those things get to happen. With a 6-man tag, like I said, you have everybody gets to have a moment to shine, right? Well, because they have the tornado version of it, none of them get that moment. Then you've got the lumberjack thing, and the whole point of it is to focus on two wrestlers and let you see how that plays out. But you got 6 people in the ring, so you never get a chance to focus. Same thing with the strap match. So you just have this convoluted mess that literally just ends with a Hulk Hogan leg drop. And by the way, I hate this match not because of Hulk Hogan. We've been pretty down on him lately. This match design made no sense, should never have happened. You could have easily had a 6-man tag match. I know they just did that. Or you could have gone, we're going to do a 6-man no disqualification match, and that would have worked. But they just put everything together and it didn't work at any point. And it results in this just horrible, horrible segment. And Nitro was killing it. And this is a huge downer for me.
Yeah, but I mean, we have Faces of Fear in lumberjack shirts.
That's hard to argue against.
See, I mean, I'm making points. Well, Joseph, and you haven't even given away that Hogan, Savage, and the Booty Man, they win. 6 minutes, 29 seconds. They win, Joseph. Our heroes are Hogan's heroes. And that's not me. Bobby calls them that. But they win. And you're right. It's not a good match. It's not great. But what is great, Joseph, is the end. After Hogan's heroes leave, Mean Gene, I'm not trying it again, Mean Gene interviews Ric Flair and the gang. There is going to be a doomsday cage match because we're just making shit up now. We just had our Team Lumberjack Tornado Tag Strap match of Doom, and now we're going to have our Doomsday Cage match at Uncensored. But the important thing here, Joseph, is Ric Flair goes absolutely insane. He is bouncing off the ropes. They're trying to have an interview, and he's just styling and profiling all over the ring. He's going back and forth. He tells us that he has the whole world in his hands. God bless him. It was fantastic. And I assume you agree.
I hated this segment.
You're joking.
No, I'm not. I really did hate this segment. I didn't enjoy it at all. My notes here are that they set up the uncensored main event, which is a horrible main event, and get ready for us to talk about that. But I think that ends this storyline. I think that's the end of it, because very soon after that is when you have like the outsiders and stuff. So I think that's kind of it. My next note is actually goes along with what you were just mentioning. It says Flair does his best to save this, but I'm being super negative at this point, so I won't accept it. And it got an F from me.
You're wrong. You're just absolutely wrong. You're right. It's terrible. The Doomsday Cage match is going to be terrible. But Ric Flair is insane. It is ridiculous. He is all over the place. He puts on a styling and profiling masterclass. And I can't fault the man. I can't blame him. It was beautiful. He painted the Mona Lisa in that ring, and I got a Mona Lisa smile from it.
What a horrible reference.
But you knew it was coming, didn't you? Well, that
I,
ends WCW Nitro.
I can't wait for you to find out how to make our Shakespeare in Love reference.
You know, there's still about half a podcast to go here, friend. Let's get into it. We got WWF Raw, March 11th, 1996, the Freeman Coliseum in San Antone, Texas. I've been there, seen the Alamo, got myself a Bowie knife, loved it. We got a match, Joseph. We got Savio Vega, and you know who he's up against? Do you know who he's wrestling tonight?
Who's that, Scott?
Well, some may call him the Ringmaster, but tonight we call him Stone Cold Steve Austin
Some people call him Maurice.
because he speaks the pompatus of love.
100%.
You can't fool me. You can't swerve me. But I think this is the first time we call him Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's still with Ted DiBiase, but he is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Mark Henry is here. I think this is Mark Henry's debut. Mark Henry's here to watch. Apparently, there was an incident between him and Jerry the King Lawler before the show, and Jerry doesn't want to talk about that. Ultimately, though, we got ourselves a brawl here. Austin and Vega, they take it outside, and they brawl for so long out there that they get a double countout. Joseph, what'd you think about this one?
So I actually ended up giving this match a B, kind of a solid B. I thought it was really fun. You are right. This is the first time they are officially calling him Stone Cold Steve Austin. For a few weeks now, when he's been around, they've been teasing the idea. They'll say he has a stone cold glare or a stone cold gaze. But this is the first time where they say completely Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like Vince McMahon says that as his name. So he comes out as the ringmaster. He leaves Stone Cold Steve Austin. That being said, I thought the match was really well done. Yeah, it ends in a double count out, right? Both men technically lose, but this is clearly starting a brand new mid-card rivalry with Savio Vega and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And for that, I really enjoy it. It's a great way, in my opinion, to kick off this segment because not only do they have a double countout, they keep fighting. After they both get eliminated, they keep going for a while. And it was just something kind of different that we haven't really seen on WWF. And again, they're just starting to put together these like pretty good matches and segments and shows. And we really enjoyed last week. And I think they're starting off this week very strong.
Yeah, it's a good match. And we have this rivalry between Steve Austin and Savio Vega. You know, you and I like Savio Vega, so I don't mind seeing them go at it. It's fun when they brawl. Not too bad. After that, though, we see what happened between Mark Henry and Jerry the King. Apparently, Jerry said something derogatory, which I know you're going to be shocked to find out that Jerry said something offensive to Mark Henry. So Mark Henry slams Jerry. Afterwards, Isaac Yankem comes out, but Jerry's embarrassed. So there you go. After that, though, Vince brings out Rowdy Roddy Piper and Goldust to have a face-off here to hype their WrestleMania match. Piper calls Goldust a cream puff that's never actually been in Hollywood. Piper talks about how he beat Adrian Adonis with a baseball bat, and he's not afraid to do that to Goldust too. Goldust tries to see under Piper's kilt, which Piper doesn't take too kindly. That starts a slapping match, and Piper slaps Goldust to the mat. What'd you think about this, Joseph?
I think this is a pretty good segment. Got a B minus for me. It's not my favorite segment. It's especially not my favorite Piper segment. But you're right. They're kind of trying to piece this together, make this work on the road to WrestleMania, as it were, although I don't think they're calling it that quite yet. Piper makes a Phyllis Diller reference, which I don't know about you, Scott, but I have a real problem when people make references that are very old that no one else will get.
I know you do. You've talked about that recently.
So if you don't know, Phyllis Diller was a very, very legendary stand-up comedian. She's known for kind of having this crazy onstage appearance. She just kind of looked like she had a bunch of like slapdash makeup on, kind of kooky hair, just kind of all over the place. And she kind of was very self-deprecating. She kind of did the male comic role of like, my wife is blah 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 and she does this and that, and kind of did that, but she turned it on its head and she would talk about her husband the way male comics would talk about their wives. So really legendary comedian. If you haven't seen any of her stuff, I suggest it. That being said, Piper makes another reference, which I would say is probably not a timely reference, but it is an important one. So the Phyllis Diller reference was because she looks so weird, haha, Goldust, you look so weird too, right? That's an odd reference because I don't know if everybody in 1996 would get Phyllis Diller, especially not now in 2024 looking back. But he also makes an Adrian Adonis reference and talks about how he wrestled Adrian Adonis. These mind games are nothing new to him. And that reference is phenomenal because Adrian Adonis really is proto Goldust. Adrian Adonis was this very androgynous type character in his own right and was very successful as a heel, but this was in the 80s. And really, if that doesn't happen, I don't know if Goldust does happen. So I think that worked really well. I will say this, though, as kind of a negative towards the segment. Some of the things that Piper says, you can very easily, from a 2024 point of view, say these are not acceptable. They're really bad. When you look at the Goldust character, and we've kind of defended it in our show, a lot of the negatives that people bring up about how it wasn't helping to kind of advance the LGBT community, you can see some of that stuff in some of the things that Piper says in this promo. So I will say, if you go back and watch it, kind of expect a bit of things. I think Piper would absolutely have been somebody who would go, hey, if I could go back, didn't take that back. I absolutely would have, because he was just, from my understanding, a pretty stand-up dude. So there is kind of that. It's a difficult one to watch from that perspective. Beyond that, from a rivalry standpoint, I do agree with you. I think it kind of sets the tone. It's not the best segment, but I think it makes it far more interesting when actually Goldust takes over. I think when he takes over, he really starts to sell his points, adding to what Piper's already said, but really turn it into a more of a about him thing and not as much about the kind of cheap shots that Piper had taken previously. I liked it. It's not my favorite, but I did enjoy it.
It's making things interesting. But you know what isn't interesting, Joseph?
What's that?
Our next match. Because we got the Godwins versus Jerry Mead and Alex Portillo. Portillo's a good restaurant, though. I like their hot dogs. But I think they call it Portillo's, though, because, it's an anglicized version of it. But, I used to call it Portillo till I was corrected. But great hot dog, great chili dog. Anyways, it's a squash match. 1 minute, 52 seconds. You got any thoughts?
It got a D for me. It's not great. I think at this point, like, the Godwins have kind of not been on TV for a while, which is why you do a squash match, to get people to go, hey, remember them? I don't really think this fit anywhere. WWF's been doing a really good job of their matches or storylines being affected by matches, and their interviews having to do with their storylines. So they've been doing a really good job. This, to me, is a huge misstep for their program.
I was just asking if you like chili dogs.
I fucking love chili dogs.
Well, all right.
Can't have them anymore, though.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, it sucks.
Well, I just brought it down a notch, but let's bring it back up.
All right.
We're going to Shawn Michaels. We got a Shawn Michaels workout montage, so I know you like that. It's his boyhood dream to win the World Wrestling Federation Championship title. He's there with Jose Lothario. Jose thinks Shawn can beat Brett, but then we go to Brett. Brett's training in Calgary. And Brett doesn't like that flippy shit that Shawn does. And he doesn't understand why some people think Shawn is better than him, because he's not. What do you think about this, Joseph? I liked it. I think it's progressing this this angle that you talked about last week that we really liked. I think they're keeping it going pretty well here, where Brett's kind of the disgruntled old veteran wrestler, and Sean's this upstart that's just annoying him by his presence. What do you think?
I agree with you. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Got an A for me. I thought both men played their roles very well. I do have kind of a bone to pick with Bret Hart, and I'll go into that in a bit. But I thought they did a really good job. HBK is still kind of doing the whole boyhood dream thing, right? He's still doing that because that's what they've centered this whole, angle for him around, and they're going to have to keep doing it. But this does a much better job of it, I thought. You get to see where he grew up. He's hanging out at the Alamo. He's showing us San Antonio, and you get Jose Lothario actually gets a character here. He gets to, be Shawn Michaels' mentor. And I think he even says something along the lines of like, when did you think I had it? And Jose Lothario gets to respond and say, I always knew that if you kept putting in the work, you were going to get there because of your talent and everything. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed it even more because they went to Bret Hart. If this was just a Shawn Michaels segment, I probably would have given it a much lower grade, like in the C level, because not because they did anything wrong, but because I don't want to see just the boyhood dream stuff, right? We've talked about that kind of a few weeks in a row, but what they're doing is starting to really work. And they did we're not just going to show you what Sean's doing. Let's kind of show you the parallel. Let's show you what's going on with Bret Hart. And you get to see Bret Hart shows us Alberta, Canada, and gets to kind of show like the difference of Shawn Michaels is from the States. So he doesn't kind of understand how gritty it is up here in Canada, kind of thing, how tough you have to be and all that stuff. If you did that now, it really wouldn't work. But that here in 1996, I think does a really good job. But then Bret says something that I have to believe he wishes he could take this back, or at least has changed his point of view. So Bret says that he comes from a long line of like tough wrestlers and people, the wrestlers from Alberta, Canada, they're all very tough, which I don't disagree with, to be clear. I think they are. I agree with him. He then says that Shawn Michaels really came from more of that Mexican kind of lucha libre style, which again is true. And he says, I don't really know very many tough Mexicans. I don't know if he says it like that, but he kind of says that those types of wrestlers aren't very tough. He says that. Now, at first, I was really, really upset by this. And then I kind of thought about it a little bit, and I had to kind of gain some perspective. Bret Hart grew up not only here in Alberta, Canada, but he grew up as a wrestler in his father's wrestling promotion, Stampede Wrestling. He wrestled there for the entire first part of his career. He did a few stints in like New Japan, but he never really wrestled in AAA or CMLL. Like he never wrestled with Mexican wrestlers. So I could understand how he wouldn't know if they're very tough. It's not really until he eventually goes to WCW that he starts wrestling people like Eddie Guerrero and whatnot. So I think I have to believe that he now would look back and then go, yeah, I was kind of wrong. I don't, that's not really true. If he does believe that still, he's a fucking idiot. But I can understand how he never had the experience. But it took me out of the promo for a bit. I was like, wait a minute, that makes no sense because there's a ton of tough Mexican wrestlers, especially at this time. But that being said, the whole segment was really good. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I don't understand why you were so offended by this, Jose Rojas.
I don't get what's so upsetting about it. But anyways, I did kind of find it funny when he was talking about how tough it is up in Alberta, Calgary, Canada, when like the stereotype of Canadians is that they're really nice and friendly people. And it's tough though. The mean streets of the nice place where everyone all these nice folks are from.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, Bret, if send us a letter, come on the show. We'll talk about it. Anyways, after that, we have kind of another letdown. We got another one of these squash matches where it's Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Vin Greer, I guess. Greer, Vin Greer, who knows? He's here to lose. Minute 53 seconds. The whole match gets talked over by Jerry and Vince, speculating on the Ultimate Warrior's return. Hunter Hearst Helmsley wins with the pedigree. Squash match. Joseph, what'd you think?
Yeah, I got to agree with you. It's kind of a dud match. I think that you did such a great job with Hunter Hearst Helmsley last week. I would have liked to have seen him in more high-profile stuff, or at least starting a new rivalry. I mean, there's plenty of guys on this roster at this time you could really start a rivalry with. Or honestly, I thought it would be kind of interesting if maybe he was Mankind's first rivalry. They obviously can't do that because of where they're going to lead him to at WrestleMania. WrestleMania, he's going to be facing Ultimate Warrior. I really think at this point he should be teasing that. Like, this, if you're going to do a squash match, I think you should give him the mic right after and let him go in on Ultimate Warrior for not showing up. And he's not showing up, and not only on Raw, he won't even show up at WrestleMania. So I got this in the bag. I think that would have been kind of interesting, but I feel like they're just really misusing Hunter at this point. It's a bit of a downer because last week he did so well.
Yeah, it was overall just boring.
Hunter herself was a great wrestler. I always love seeing a good pedigree, but the match itself was a squash match. And yeah, I think there could have been more to it. The purpose of the match was to drive this Ultimate Warrior storyline, but beyond just Vince and Jerry talking about it the whole time, it doesn't really do anything for the match. After that, though, we got our main event. We got The Undertaker and Yokozuna versus Owen Hart and the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. We got Diesel watching backstage. He's talking about how he and Shawn have some tag team matches lined up. He makes some weird comments about how he hopes the rumors about Shawn aren't true, and then he shoves the camera away. Later, he comes out and he clotheslines Paul Bearer. Undertaker sees the clothesline of Paul Bearer. He goes after Diesel. This leaves Yokozuna alone. This kind of becomes a handicap match. As soon as Yoko starts kind of launching his comeback, they work on him, but he mounts a comeback. But then Vader comes in. There's a DQ. Ahmed Johnson and Jake Roberts come in. They get pummeled. Yokozuna comes back again. He beats up on Vader. It's just chaos. And eventually Camp Cornette flees backstage. Whole thing is chaos. Undertaker and Yokozuna win via disqualification. It's a 5-minute, 19-second match. Joseph, explain all this to me.
First, I got to talk about the fact that George Burns catches a stray from Jerry Lawler. So we've had two very, very old comedians get referenced on the same night. George Burns, unfortunately, had died a few days prior to this. And so that's what Jerry Lawler is making fun of, because of course he would, because fuck Jerry Lawler. That being said, let's go into the match. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought it got an A from me. I thought this was a great way to showcase multiple storylines at the same time. You mentioned that it was chaos. You said that a few times. And what's funny is one of my notes here is it's orchestrated chaos at its finest. You get Diesel being a cemented heel. They've kind of been playing this back and forth with Diesel that he may or may not be a heel. He's kind of beats him, marches to the beat of his own drum. That's fine. But now they're like, no, he's a bad guy. He went and attacked a defenseless Paul Bearer for no reason. And so then Taker goes off chasing after him. So you get to see the continuation of that storyline. Then at the same time, you have this Yokozuna really wants to kind of dismantle Camp Cornette thing, right? So they have their moment, and then Yokozuna, like you said, is mounting his comeback when Vader comes in. And really, they seem to be angling towards a Vader and Yokozuna storyline more than anything. So you get to see that progress. And then you have Ahmed Johnson and Jake the Snake Roberts come in to help Yokozuna and kind of set the stage for this. I believe it's going to be a 6-man tag match at WrestleMania. So you basically get 2 matches and potentially 3 storylines here, all moving forward in, as you said, a 5-minute match. That's orchestrated chaos. It's phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It got an A for me.
Well, that brings us to the end of the night, though, Joseph. Who won? WCW, WWF?
I had to think about this for a bit because I think they both had really strong shows, except for they had some duds in the mix. I think WCW had a really strong first 3 quarters, and that last quarter of the show was really, really bad.
So you're saying they are the wrestling equivalent of the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, that's yes, essentially. Yeah.
My team.
Yeah. So in that case, bolt up, you know what I mean? That being said, I thought that WWF was a really good program, but then they had these random squash matches that I don't think helped the show at all. I will say, though, those squash matches didn't hurt the show as much as the 6-man tornado tag lumberjack strap match hurt their show. So I'm gonna give the edge to WWF. But I thought for the most part both shows are pretty good.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm
Okay.
gonna give it to WCW. I'm gonna give it to WCW. You know, I thought I got my Jim Duggan fix.
I got the Road Warriors and the Steiner brothers. You know, the Road Warriors who are back, who doesn't look like they've got any rust on them at all. Versus the Steiner brothers, a dream match. We got a fun Lex Luger match. We got the Lex Luger Alex Wright match, which was fun. We're getting into goofy Lex, which you and I enjoy. You're right, the 6-man tornado tag lumberjack strap match of doom or whatever. Not the best match, but I did get Faces of Fear in lumberjack shirts, and I'm hot on that. You know I like me some Faces of Fear, and I like them even more in lumberjack plaid shirts. So I'm going to have to give it to WCW. But what did the fans think, Joseph? Who was watching what?
Well, on Raw, they took a substantial drop. Obviously, they don't have no competition this week, but they were at a 2.9 in their Nielsen ratings.
Well, let me tell you something, Joseph. The fans agreed with me. 3.6 for WCW Monday Night Nitro.
You sure it wasn't 3.2?
I say,
no, I said 3.6. No, 3.2. 3.2. Spoiler, they win next week too. 3.6.
Now no one's going to tune in next week.
Oh man, it's just like Eric Bischoff giving away the card or the outcomes. Anyways, WCW wins 3.2. I'm right, you're wrong. That's the end of the show. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys. Hey, everybody, it's Joseph. And guess what? Not only can you listen to us every Monday on Spotify, but you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and YouTube Podcasts as well. Just search for Monday Night Wars Podcast. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at MON Night Wars Pod, on Instagram at Monday Night Wars Podcast, or just email us at mnwpodcast@gmail.com. And finally, subscribe to our Patreon at Monday Night Wars Podcast. For $2 a month, you get every pay-per-view from WCW and WWF during this era, as well as additional content later on. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you here next time on the Monday Night Wars Podcast.